The sun had already risen high enough, bathing the endless pastures along the road from Mandurah to Waruna in bright light. Green meadows stretched out on both sides, where cows and sheep grazed lazily, enclosed by sparse wooden fences. Kangaroos dozed languidly in the shade of the occasional eucalyptus tree. I was driving my well-worn Toyota Land Cruiser, the Australian indie rock band Spiderbait, blasting cheerfully from the speakers. Beside me, Liv was engrossed in scrolling through her Instagram feed, occasionally showing me funny memes. In the back seat, Finn and Dec were loudly discussing plans for tonight's party, interrupting each other with jokes and laughter. I smiled, listening to their chatter. Waruna was just a short drive away, about 20 minutes at a leisurely pace. The day promised to be great. The sun was blazing, friends were nearby, and fun lay ahead. "Oi, Liami," Finn suddenly said, shifting in his seat. "Mate, there's this thing. I need to pull over for a sec, you know?" I frowned slightly but nodded. "Nature calling, is it?" "Yeah," Finn admitted. "Stop by that cornfield." I pulled over to the side of the road. "Oh, corn," Dec perked up. "Let's go quickly grab a couple of cobs while Finn's doing his business." I shook my head. "Don't even think about it. That's private property, you guys." "Oh, come on, Liami." Finn waved off, already opening the door. "No one will notice 2 cobs, I swear." Dec backed him up, grinning. "Grilled corn on the barbie is sacred," and climbed out after Finn. I sighed, watching my 2 reckless mates head into the depths of the cornfield. Liv looked up from her phone and smiled at me, shaking her head. "Those 2 are devils," she said. 20 minutes passed. Liv, leaning back in her seat, was glued to TikTok, while I wandered around the car, exhaling cigarette smoke into the hot Australian air. "Bloody hell, where are they?" Liv finally said, not taking her eyes off the screen. "Yeah," I grumbled, nervously crumpling my second cigarette between my fingers. "Probably found some super-duper cob in there and are having a secret corn party." Inside, though, a nagging feeling of unease was starting to creep in. Just then, my phone rang, jolting me out of these thoughts. Jason's name flashed on the display, one of the guys already in full swing at the party. "Yow, Liami! What's with the hibernation? The barbies are smoking, the pool's heating up. You blokes promised to bring the grog." Jason's voice was relaxed and slightly tipsy. "Yeah, Jace, we haven't forgotten. Just a slight hold-up here," I replied, my gaze fixed on the peacefully swaying green walls of corn. Finn and Dec went to take a leak in the bushes. I mean, the corn, and they've been gone for about 20 minutes now. "A 20-minute piss? Did they find a golden dunny in there?" Jason roared with laughter. "All right, move your arses, we're parched here." I hung up, feeling irritation rising inside me. "Jason's already calling. Wants his beer." Liv looked up from her phone, a questioning look on her face. "Maybe you should yell for them again." I cupped my hands around my mouth and shouted towards the cornfield. "Finn, Dec, you still breathing in there?" Silence. Only the rustling of dry corn leaves in the sleepy haze of the day. "Oi, you corn ninjas. What are you hiding for? Like unicorns got you by the horns," Liv added with a nervous chuckle. Again, not a sound. "Bloody hell, did you 2 actually shit yourselves out of fear of cornworms?" I snapped, feeling my composure finally snapping. "All right," I said, stubbing out my cigarette and feeling the jokes end. "Enough mucking around. Let's go see what the bloody hell's going on in there." Liv nodded, and we headed into the green thicket of the cornfield along the same path those 2 idiots had taken. The tall, closely packed stalks immediately swallowed us, cutting us off from the road and the familiar world.
"Fiend!"
I called out, trying to keep a sliver of calm in my voice.
"Dec!"
Liv echoed, her voice already laced with noticeable anxiety. But the response was still a heavy silence. And the deeper we ventured into this green sea, the stronger a strange sinking feeling in the pit of my stomach grew. We pushed our way through the dense rows of corn, our shouts of
Fiend! Dick!
Swallowed by the rustling leaves. The tall stalks seemed to absorb sounds, forcing us to strain our ears to the limit. Suddenly, in the distance, Finn's muffled voice carried, "Hey!" Instinctively, we started to jump, trying to pinpoint the direction. "Finn, jump again! Where are you?" I yelled, trying to cut through the rustling foliage. Finally, Finn's fair head popped up above the green sea. We rushed towards him, pushing through the stiff leaves. "What took you so long?" Liv blurted out reproachfully when we finally reached Finn. "We've been waiting for you for half an hour." "Half an hour? We only just went in," Finn exclaimed, looking around. "I only just had a slash, heading back to the car now, just taking a while to get there." "And where's Deck?" I asked, looking around. "Well, he wanted to grab some corn, should be around here somewhere. Or maybe he's already headed back to the car," Finn guessed. We moved in the direction we thought we'd come from, but after 5 minutes, it became clear we were going in circles. "Oi!" Deck's shout came from deeper in the field. "Where are you?" We started calling out to each other, our voices darting between the stalks until we finally emerged, facing each other. I automatically pulled out my phone to check how much time we'd lost. "No service," I stated in surprise, looking at the empty indicator. "Lost signal," Liv confirmed, frowning. "Hang on," I said, feeling a knot of anxiety tighten. "I reckon we're lost." "Nah, come on, Leamy," Finn waved off. "We just came from over there." "Liv, hop up on my shoulders, take a look around," I asked. Without hesitation, she climbed onto my shoulders and a moment later quietly said, "Guys, you won't believe it. It's just corn all around us, as far as the eye can see." Her words about the horizon of stalks hung in the air, filling us with a strange feeling. Finn, frowning, climbed onto Deck's shoulders. "This is a bugger. Where the bloody hell have we ended up?" "All right, keep calm." I tried to project an air of composure, even though I felt a chill inside. The sun should help us get our bearings. The sun, which had been almost directly overhead, was now noticeably shifted to the west. "That's weird," Finn mumbled, staring at the sun in surprise. "Isn't it a bit late already?" Confusion began to give way to anxiety. We stood in the middle of an endless corn maze, without signal, without any idea which way to go. We walked along a narrow furrow between the rows of corn, the tall stalks closing in above us, as if trying to cut off any way back. Liv once again climbed onto my shoulders, her legs trembling with fatigue. "Well?" I asked, feeling beads of sweat trickle down my back. "Same thing," her voice wavered. "Just corn." I set her back down. "Just keep walking," I said, trying to sound more confident than I felt. "We'll get out sooner or later." Finn walked ahead, pushing his way through with his elbows. His white t-shirt had long since darkened with sweat and clung to his back. Deck trailed behind, breathing heavily, occasionally spitting out dry saliva. "Bloody field," Finn muttered, wiping his face. "We've been walking for over an hour. Where the bloody hell is the edge?" I looked at the sun. It was slowly sinking towards the horizon, painting the corn in rusty hues. But the field didn't change. No roads, no farms, no edge. Just endless rows stretching into the distance. My throat was dry, my lips were cracked. I'd have given anything for a sip of water. "Just keep walking," I repeated. "Sooner or—" "Guys," Deck suddenly interrupted, stopping. "Have you noticed? No birds, no flies." We froze. He was right. No buzzing, no chirping, not a single sound except the rustling of leaves, as if all living things avoided this place. It was getting dark. "Let's take a break," I said, stopping. In the narrow rows, you couldn't even sit down properly. Your knees bumped into the next row of corn. The stalks dug into your back. Finn was the first to start stomping down a patch, breaking the stalks at the root. 5 minutes later, we had something resembling a nest, about 2 by 2 meters, littered with crumpled leaves and half-rotten cobs. "We'll be like those rabbits," Dec croaked, stretching his lower back with a chuckle. Liv gathered a few young cobs. We broke them open and started chewing the tough kernels. The juice was bitter with an earthy taste, but at least it created the illusion of quenching our thirst. I pulled out my lighter and held it to a pile of dry leaves. The flame caught immediately, illuminating our dirty faces. The smoke drifted low as if hesitant to rise in the still air. Darkness had completely settled in. We silently agreed to spend the night here, in this trampled hollow amidst the corn, huddled close to the flickering fire. Bang! The sound hit our ears, low, vibrating, like a brass gong, somewhere in the darkness. "What the hell?" Finn didn't finish. We all jumped up, colliding in the center of the clearing. "Deck up you go!" Finn scrambled onto his back in a panic. "I see them," he rasped. "Lights! That way, where we were headed." We threw ourselves into furiously stamping out the fire. The hot ground burned our souls. Fire is dangerous in Australia. Only when the last wisp of smoke died out did we bolt through the corn. We stumbled out of the cornfield, and an unfamiliar town opened up before us, gloomy, dark, as if deserted. Moonlight slid across the peeling facades, not lingering on the empty window openings. "Where are we?" Liv gripped my sleeve, her fingers trembling. I pulled out my phone. No service still glowed on the screen. From behind us, from the cornfield, came voices. No, not voices. Something between a growl and a whisper, as if several people were trying to speak with someone else's mouths. "Let's go." I stepped forward, and the sound of my boots on the cracked asphalt echoed down the deserted street. The roar grew behind us, low, animalistic, making my skin crawl. We bolted forward, not paying attention to the road. The town greeted us with an unnatural silence. Alien 9-story buildings with peeling facades, signboards with cracked paint, the letters on them not forming any familiar words. "What the hell?" Finn froze by a road sign covered in rusty streaks. We didn't bother trying to decipher it. The nearest entrance gaped with a kicked-in door. Inside, it smelled of damp and dust, like a long-locked closet. We hurtled up the dark staircase. The light from a phone flashlight slid across empty doorways, bare rectangles in the walls. On the 5th floor, my beam caught the only intact door, whole with an undamaged handle. The door opened effortlessly. Inside, quiet dust hung in the air, but there wasn't the usual smell of abandonment. "Let's go in," I whispered, feeling for the cold metal of a key in the lock. The lock clicked with surprising ease. "We need to barricade it." I looked around while the others stood frozen in the darkness. A massive wardrobe stood in the hallway, a perfect barricade. We silently began to push the wardrobe towards the door. The wood scraped across the floor, leaving trails in the layer of dust. Finn grabbed an edge, his fingers digging into the wooden panels. "Pull!" he hissed, and the wardrobe slammed into place with a thud, blocking the entrance. I listened. It was quiet in the stairwell, too quiet. No footsteps, no creaking, only our ragged breathing. Liv turned on her flashlight. The beam caught empty walls with furniture marks, cracked parquet flooring, an open door to the next room. "Guys," Finn's voice trembled. "A calendar." A tear-off calendar hung on the wall. All the sheets were intact. The top one showed today's date. But the year was 2003. We froze in front of the calendar, unable to tear our gazes from the ominous date. 2003. The numbers seemed alive, ready to flip over any second if we stared too intently. "All right." Finn ran a trembling hand over his face, leaving streaks of dirt on his skin. His voice cracked mid-word. Either we've all smoked the same bad stuff, or this isn't our world, Liv finished for him, hugging herself so tightly her knuckles turned white. Her eyes darted around the room, searching for something familiar. I went over to the television, a massive box with a convex screen covered in a layer of dust. The power button yielded with a soft click, but the screen remained dead and black. A remote control lay nearby, its buttons adorned with strange symbols, something like Cyrillic or something even more alien. A newspaper lay on the kitchen table. I mechanically unfolded the yellowed pages, and the dates hit my consciousness. The day and month were right, but the year was different. Finn suddenly laughed, sharply, hysterically, the sound grating on our nerves like a knife on glass. "Okay, options," he gasped between fits of laughter. 1, we're in the Matrix. 2, someone slipped us a bad trip. 3, we're dead. Guys. Liv didn't take her eyes off the window, her voice trembling. We approached, and hell unfolded before us. A man in tattered clothes shuffled down the street, dragging his intestines tangled in his own legs. With each step, black slime oozed from him, leaving a glistening trail on the asphalt. Nearby, by a shattered shop window, sat a girl. Or rather, what had once been a girl. Her disfigured head methodically banged against the metal frame, although the glass had long since shattered. The movements were precise, mechanical, like a wind-up doll with a broken mechanism. A gaunt corpse rummaged through a trash can. Its jaw hung by a shred of skin, and fingers with dried-out nails dug through the rot, bringing something dark to the gaping hole where its mouth should have been. But the scariest of all was the one standing right beneath our window, huge with a flattened chest, as if a bulldozer had run over it. It suddenly froze. Its nose, or rather, the hole where its nose should have been, twitched convulsively. A wet sob escaped, its rotten lungs sucking in air. "It smells us." I barely heard my own voice over the frantic pounding of my heart. The dead thing slowly turned towards our building entrance. It took a step, then another. Somewhere downstairs in the stairwell, something heavy crashed. Liv gripped my arm. Her fingers were as cold as ice. "They're coming," Deck whispered. We moved through the apartment, shielding our phone flashlights with our hands. Bluish light seeped through our fingers, snatching details of the frozen world from the darkness. The kitchen was strangely preserved. I ran my hand over a wooden knife block, a layer of dust, but the knives stood as if new. A chef's knife glinted in the beam of light as I pulled it out. The blade was sharp. Someone had clearly sharpened it before leaving. Finn whistled silently, picking up a meat cleaver. The handle was wrapped in yellowed electrical tape, but it held firm. He made a practice swing. The air hissed as it cut through. "Cast iron never fails," Liv whispered, taking a massive frying pan off the wall. The metal responded with a dull thud to a tap of her finger. Only a thin layer of dust betrayed the years of inactivity. Deck, meanwhile, was examining a cupboard. A meat grinder was slightly rusty, but it was heavy. A wooden rolling pin had kept its shape, only darkened with age. Glass jars of preserves stood untouched, although their contents had long since turned into something unidentifiable. We exchanged glances. These things had outlived their owners, outlived an entire era, and now they were our last allies. A distinct scraping sound came from below. Something heavy was being dragged up the stairs. Finn tightened his grip on the cleaver. I checked the balance of the knife. The weapons had been waiting 20 years for this moment. Liv and I pressed ourselves against the window again, watching the movement below. The moon hung over the city, huge and dirty yellow, like the eye of a blind god. Its light clung to the broken asphalt, snatching an endless procession from the darkness. The street swarmed. A herd of the dead, hundreds, thousands, moved along the main street, bunching together and spreading out like mercury. The voices of the dead horde merged into one drawn-out howl that chilled the blood. An old man in a torn coat methodically banged his head against a lamppost. With each blow, fragments of bone flew from his skull. A bride in a wedding dress, now grey and torn, rocked an empty stroller as if lulling an invisible child. Her fingers were gnawed to the phalanges. 3 schoolchildren in tattered uniforms dragged something large and wet, exchanging hoarse grunts. One held a notebook with falling out pages in his teeth. A legless creature crawled along the sidewalk, leaving a trail of rotting flesh behind it. A woman with her ribs twisted outwards, protruding from beneath a tattered blouse, screamed silently, only black slime bubbling in her torn throat. Someone with twisted legs dragged a cat, or rather what was left of it. A strip of skin, bones dangling on tendons. One, in the rags of a fireman, dragged an axe. All these creatures with decomposing limbs methodically circled the buildings. They poured into entrances, climbed out through windows, fell and rose, blind, deaf, but relentless. They're organized. They're busy with something, Liv whispered. I nodded. This wasn't chaotic wandering. The movement seemed purposeful. And behind the door, in the stairwell, they kept coming. The thud of bare feet on the concrete echoed as if a sack of bones was being dragged up the stairs. The wheezing of rotting lungs filled the air with a sickening whistle. Growling, low, animalistic, as if an unkilled bear was roaring beneath the earth, echoed through the floors. In the neighboring apartments, there was the sound of falling furniture, the crack of breaking wood, the tinkle of shattered glass. They were searching. They could smell us. Sometimes, a dull thud of a body against our door. Once, twice. But the dead passed by, as if the door were just part of the wall. Finn pressed himself against the wall at the end of the hallway, his knuckles white as he gripped the handle of the cleaver. His voice broke into a whisper. They're passing by like they're blind. Deck slowly raised a finger to his lips, his eyes gleaming in the darkness like those of a cornered animal. They probably navigate by sound and smell. His whisper was barely audible. We froze, afraid to move. That's how it went all night. We sat pressed against the wall, holding our breath. Time stretched agonizingly slowly, measured only by new sounds of horror. Finn, as pale as chalk, crawled to the window and reported in a whisper, "Still out there." Liv trembled in my arms. Fever and thirst tormented her, but by morning she finally drifted into a restless sleep. Deck also briefly succumbed to oblivion. Finn and I didn't close our eyes, and then, light. A grey, sickly dawn. The dead froze. As if on command, they turned east and shuffled towards the cornfield. The last to go was the huge dead man with the flattened chest, his roar gradually fading into the distance. By sunrise, the streets were empty. Only the crushed corn and dark stains on the asphalt remained as reminders of the nightmarish events. The field rustled, accepting them back. The silence in the apartment was oppressive, broken only by Liv's heavy breathing. Her forehead burned under my palm. I carefully carried her into the bedroom and laid her on the dusty bed. "Water?" she croaked, barely opening her eyes. Deck sat leaning against the wall, his fingers clenching his temples. It seemed dehydration was getting to him too. Finn ran a hand over his face, wiping away sweat. "We need to find water, now." He looked at me and we nodded simultaneously. "Deck, you stay with Liv," I said. We searched the apartment again in the daylight. We found 2 spacious old bags, a leather one with worn handles and a canvas backpack that smelled of mothballs. The 3 of us pushed the wardrobe away from the door. Finn picked up the cleaver. I took the chef's knife. Deck handed us the rolling pin, oak heavy with chipped edges. The door creaked, releasing us into the ominous silence of the stairwell.